Hello, it's Becky. This is my second video on, awareness months, okay? So, I filmed one like a week ago, and I intended to film this one right afterwards. That did not happen. I started having, really bad sleepy attacks, and I decided that that was not gonna be good for me to do another one. So I'm doing it now, a week later. I'm a sweaty ass bitch right now. It's really hot, so I'm red, and I apologize for that. But 'tis the way it is, so. Alright, today I am going to be talking about borderline, and May being Borderline Personality Disorder Awareness Month. So, it is, as someone with borderline, to me it's nice to have a month dedicated to spreading awareness for borderline, but borderline needs to be talked about and discussed all the time, not just in May. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some statistics on borderline, because a lot of people don't realize it, but borderline is really common. It's hard to explain, and I'm kind of in a weird mind space right now. I've had a very long day, so I apologize if I slur or take a little while to think about things. What was I saying? Forgot what I was saying. Whoops. Oh wait, no, I remember. Yeah, borderline is a lot more common than people think it is. It's hard because there is a lot of stigma around it, and people don't understand, like, what's borderline and what's not. It gets mistaken for other disorders pretty frequently, and there are some statistics I'm gonna read that have to do with that and other things surrounding borderline. I apologize. I'm going to fix my hair real fast because, like I said, I'm a sweaty bitch, and I need to fix it because it does not look great. And, like, I normally don't care, but right now I kind of do. So yeah, I have some statistics that I'm gonna read, and I said in the previous video, which was on May also being Mental Health Awareness Month, that I don't like to use statistics. I never have before this video and the mental health awareness one. But borderline and mental health awareness are such huge things that need to be discussed, and I want to give facts, because then people can't be like, oh, well, you're just talking out your ass, this means nothing. Like, no, these are facts from studies, and they're real. So, yeah. So, disclaimers. I never intend to offend anyone. If I offend you, I apologize. I am not a professional, and if my videos help you, I'm very happy. But if you think you have a problem, you should go see someone, because I'm not a professional. My videos are not professional. They are my opinions as someone who has borderline. And if just identifying with some of the things I talk about helps, I'm glad. But if it's to a point where it's impacting your life and you have these symptoms, and even if it's not borderline, just mental health in general, please go see someone, because it's very important. So, what else? Okay, so I will be using statistics, and I will put the links to the statistics, the websites I got them from, in the description of my video. Please look in the description for like the triggers that I'm gonna talk about, and I also have like resources for like mental health in the description as well. I always do, because I find that really important, to give resources so that people know where to go if they have a problem. So, yes. All right. Borderline is very misunderstood and very stigmatized. It's even people in the psychology field can be judgmental about people with borderline. Story time, okay? I have been in and out of school, like college, for like, God, 7 years now. And I hate this, but I was taking abnormal psychology, and I was thrilled because I love psychology. That's why I'm in school, is to be in the psychology field. And abnormal psychology is like one of my favorite things to talk about. I have a lot of experience in that department. It was the first day of this class, okay? And I was so excited. I was so thrilled. I was like, I'm in this class, yay! Like, I was so excited. And the professor starts talking about herself and like explaining, who she is and what experience she has in psychology. And in among this spiel she gave about who she was and, her education and the time she spent working in the psychology field, she ended it with, I have worked with all different kinds of groups of people in the psychology, with mental disorders, but there's one group of people I absolutely cannot work with. It makes me laugh now, but I was so offended. She said, I cannot work with people who have cluster B personality disorders. And she listed them off. She said, so that's people with borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. And then she said, I want to just slap them in the face. It makes me laugh now. But when she said that, it legit, like, emotionally felt like she had slapped me in the face. Because, one, she had no fucking idea who I was. Two, this bitch has worked in the psychology field for 20 plus years, she tells me. Is that the education you're giving to other people in the psychology field? Because it's the education you're giving to the people in your class who may end up in the psychology field at some point. And that just adds to the stigma and the negativity towards borderline and other personality disorders. And I couldn't believe that she had said that, because I felt so hurt and I just froze, because I just felt so hurt and stunned that she'd said that. And when something shocks me, I have a tendency to freeze and just not say anything. And she said this at the, like, beginning of the class, and it was like a 2-hour-long class, and I just sat there the whole class in shock. Like, I did the work, like, but in my head, all that I could think was, this lady wants to slap me in the face, and she doesn't even know who I am. And where I am now, I would have gotten up and walked out. But I didn't, because I didn't want to draw attention to myself. I didn't want to give her a reason to be like, see, they're dramatic bitches. Like, so I didn't. I stayed in the class and I suffered for 2 hours listening to her talk, introducing myself to other people, but not really being there emotionally because I was just so shocked. And I went home and I said this. I told the family I live with what she had said. And they were like, that is unexcusable. Like, that's not... She shouldn't be saying that. When you're a teacher or professor and you're teaching people who are going to be going on to continue the work in that field, even if it's just taking a class to appease a requirement for your degree, you are still feeding that person awful judgment about a disorder you obviously know nothing about. And in my opinion, and like I said, my opinion, if you're a professor or a teacher, you need to be unbiased, because you are shaping the minds of people. And these people, this could be their first time hearing about these disorders. And for you to say that and already give them a negative connotation towards a disorder they have not heard of, you are making it so stigmatized. You're just adding to it by saying that. And I went to the dean And it took a lot of pushing for me to go, but I did, because that's not acceptable. It's not, especially for a professor to be saying that. But I went to the dean with my kind of adoptive father, and he helped me, because I do get really shy when dealing with authority figures, and this whole situation was unpleasant to begin with, so going and having a meeting and having to talk about it was really hard. So I went and I told the dean about it, and she said, that will be fixed. That will not happen again. And I got an email not long after that she had spoken to that professor, and that she had made the professor apologize in front of the class for saying those things, and that they should not judge a mental disorder or disorders on what she said. And she wanted to apologize to me to my face, and I was like, fuck that. No. Because then I'm giving you a face to associate with borderline. And at that point in time, I was not ready for that. I had known that I had borderline or symptoms of it since I was 18. But I was like 22, 23 when I was in this class, and I had just been diagnosed officially. So it was still new to me, the idea that I do have this, that I am clinically diagnosable for this disorder. And I didn't want to give her a face to associate with borderline. I didn't want to meet her under her terms for her to apologize to me when she said that shit in the first place. Not knowing who's in her class, if anyone in her class has those disorders. And to this day, I'm salty. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I am so fucking salty towards her. And sometimes I want to give her name. And say, don't take this class. But I don't, because it was dealt with. And yeah. That is one of the worst experiences I've had as someone with borderline. Bitch didn't even know me. She had no idea who I was, what I was like, what kind of friend I am. Like, I'm so much more than just borderline. I'm not just Rebecca the borderline. Like, I have so many other traits and things I like to do and things I dislike, and I am a whole person outside of that label. And for her to judge me based on that label, I find it disgusting. And that's common. When I was 18 and I got told I believe you might have borderline. I had no idea what it was. I had never heard of it. I went to a psychiatrist for the first time thinking I was bipolar. Turns out I am. But she, at that point, said to me, and I loved her. She was fantastic. But she said to me, you have a lot of red flags for this disorder, but I don't want to diagnose you because you are only 18. And yes, that is the age that they start diagnosing personality disorders. And also because there is a lot of stigma surrounding borderline. And some professionals refuse to treat patients with borderline. And she was like, and I don't want that for you. I want you to be able to get treatment. I want to help you as you and treat your symptoms. Because there is no cure for borderline. There's no med for borderline. There is medication you can take for symptoms of borderline. There's therapy that can help with regulating everything and getting better and learning better ways to handle things. But there is no cure. And I don't want to say definitely because I don't know for sure. But in my experience, from my experience and people I know who have borderline, it's a lifelong thing. It is not, hey, I got diagnosed. I just went through like 5 years of therapy. I'm fine now. For me, I've been in therapy for 8 years now, on and off. And I did a really intense dialectical behavior therapy program, which is the go-to for therapy for people with borderline. Because the woman, Marsha Linehan, who created borderline, no. It's been a day, I apologize. She created DBT, and she had borderline, so she understands. But that's the go-to for treatment for borderline. And I did that program, and my therapist at the time said, I have never seen someone go in that program who graduated not come out a different person. She was like, every person I've seen graduate that program comes out different than when they went in. And that was so true for me, because when I first went into that program, my therapist had to fight for me to get into that program. I was so suicidal all the time. I hated my life. I didn't think I was ever going to get better. I got to a point where I was like, this is my last resort, and if this doesn't work, bye! And I came out of there so different. Like, I like to say it saved my life, but one of my therapists said, no, don't give the therapy program all the credit. You were the one who showed up to the therapy, even when it was excruciating and you didn't want to. You were the one who did it. We helped you. So, DBT did not save your life. It helped you save your life. So, that's how I look at it now. But even with things that I am better with now, I still have inclinations towards them. Like money. One of my biggest struggles with borderline is impulsive behavior, especially regarding money. I hate talking about money because it gives me anxiety, because I don't trust myself with money. And I've gotten a lot better. But I still have inclinations and urges to spend impulsively on things I don't need. And it's usually to help myself feel better. And then I feel guilty like 5 minutes later. And I'm like, why the fuck did I buy that? So even though I might get better and learn better ways of handling things, I feel like I will always have the possibility of going back to what I was doing. I will always have those urges to engage in those destructive behaviors and thoughts and feelings. So borderline it's really hard. It's painful. Very painful disease. Sometimes with the amount of pain I feel with this disorder, I'm like, kill me. Kill me. I can't. Like, this is not worth it. And I don't want to say I don't feel like that now. I feel like that less now. I still have a lot of pain. I have a hard time with things when other people don't. I get really mad because my life has been basically put on hold and I have not been able to fully become an adult because I have to deal with this shit. I see all my friends and my loved ones moving on with their lives and having what I want in life, and I can't even get a fucking associate's degree because I'm dealing with all this shit that I didn't ask for. So borderline's a really hard disorder, and it causes a lot of pain. And sorry about that. I forget. I was going somewhere with that, but I don't remember what I was gonna say. So I'm just gonna move on to statistics because they're written down. Let's see here. And like I said, I don't like to use statistics, but this is a huge, huge thing, and it needs to be talked about, and I want to use facts, because that way, it's a fact. let's see. So, borderline is a lot more common than people think it is. And I said that at the beginning of the video. It's hard to say the exact percentage of how many people have it because there is a lot of stigma surrounding borderline. Psychiatrists don't want to diagnose borderline, or they refuse to treat patients with borderline. And that's not every psychiatrist, okay? I've had great psychiatrists, and for the most part, they've been extremely supportive and diagnosed me as borderline and treated me as someone with borderline. But people either get misdiagnosed or they don't get the appropriate help because I don't know where I was going with that. Whoops. Sorry. This is a disaster. Fuck it, I'm still gonna do this video. Even if it is a train wreck. I have written here that the percentage in this study or in the statistics that I have here, that the rate of, like, the percentage of borderline in the US is 1.6%. In the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, that rate could be so much higher. I don't remember the exact percentage, but I remember the DSM-5 saying that the percentage could be as high as like 5%, maybe even 6% of people in the US. And like, don't quote me on that. If you want to know the percentage for sure, what they say, please look it up, because I'm going off of this shit brain, so it could be wrong. But it is very common, and most people haven't heard of it. I didn't until they said, I think you might have this. But just to put in perspective, 1.6% of the US population, that's over 4 million people with borderline. And borderline is not as well known as other disorders, but it's more common than disorders like schizophrenia. And that's so interesting to me, because schizophrenia, like, when people hear mental illness, I feel like that's, and this isn't this is not the case for everyone, but I feel like schizophrenia is one of those disorders where when someone says mental health or mental illness, people can name that one or know the stereotypes surrounding it, which stereotypes are not always true. So do research. And The association is bad tonight. I apologize for that. But yeah, it's more common than schizophrenia, and schizophrenia I feel like is more well known. And that's sad. Let's see here. Oh, this is an interesting statistic. So, men and women, that's a big thing with borderline. Men are less likely to be diagnosed with borderline. They're more likely to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder or PTSD than diagnosed with borderline when that's what they have. The statistic I have here is about 75% of women. No. What did I write down? Holy shit. I am very confused. I did not make good notes on this one. Oh, okay. I get it now. So the ratio for women to men being diagnosed, 75% women. So 3 to 1. 3 women, 1 men. And like I said, men are more likely to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder or PTSD or bipolar or something different when they do have borderline. And that's another thing, is comorbidity. And I talked about that in the video I made for Mental Health Awareness Month. Comorbidity is when you have more than one disorder. I am comorbid. I have borderline, bipolar 2, generalized anxiety disorder, most likely have PTSD, and most likely have OCD, but never been diagnosed with either one. But I have been diagnosed with borderline, bipolar 2, and GAD. And I was also, the first diagnosis I got was major depressive disorder, with severe depressive episodes. And hi. I'm sorry. This is frustrating. I want this to be a good video. But this is how I am, so I guess in a way it is a good video because it's showing borderline and some of the symptoms. So I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so this is in regards to comorbidity. No. Misdiagnosis. Over 40% of people who have borderline. I believe that's men and women, but it could be just men. Because, like I was saying, they're more likely to be misdiagnosed. But over 40% were previously misdiagnosed as bipolar or major depressive disorder. Now, comorbidity is common, especially with mental disorders. So, example, because people with borderline are in so much pain emotionally and can be very impulsive, it is common for people who have borderline to also have a substance abuse disorder. You know, misuse drugs or be an alcoholic or, eating disorders as well. My sister has borderline and she has anorexia and panic disorder. So it's common for people with borderline to develop more than one disorder. And I thought this one was interesting because I went to a psychiatrist for the first time thinking I was bipolar. Because that's the stereotype I had in my head of the quick changing emotions, the extremes. I thought bipolar. When in reality, that's not bipolar. Because bipolar comes in cycles. And for the most part, from what I've heard from professionals I've seen, is that it usually lasts a long period of time. It's not quick changing every day, all day, different emotions. You know, for someone who's bipolar, usually it's a period of time that they're one extreme or the other. So I have a friend who's bipolar, and I mean bipolar 1. Like, when I talk to her and she's manic, I cannot talk to her. Like, she drains my energy just by me listening to her. Because she makes no sense. And I love her, but oh my God. When she's manic, it's usually at least a week long. Sometimes maybe even a month or longer. There's a period of time, like 2 years ago, where she was in the hospital for like forever. I don't remember how long, but I was worried because I had not heard from her, and I had been messaging her. I hadn't heard from her for like months, and I was so scared. I was checking the obituaries every day thinking she was dead, but she was in the hospital because she was manic, and it took that long to get her stabilized. Whereas, and yes, bipolar, it's so dangerous to have bipolar because the change is usually like that. Like where they go from on top of the world, manic, to absolute rock bottom, depressed. And I have bipolar 2, which is like, and I'm new to this. I only just got diagnosed in March, so I don't know much about bipolar 2 or bipolar 1 for that matter. I know what I've seen with my friends and what I know from my experience. But bipolar 2 usually is, you do have those cycles, but you don't get full-blown mania like bipolar 1. You get hypomania, which is lesser than manic, but still up there, not normal. And I've been hypomanic. Yeah. Usually for me, when I'm hypomanic, it's, I'm gonna blitz clean my apartment at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't need sleep for like 2 days. Like, just energy, confidence. Whereas someone who's manic, like full blown, they might, and like I said, I'm not an expert. I know a couple people with bipolar. But like, I had one friend who was bipolar who quit their job when they were manic. And this was a job they worked hard to get. And then they went from manic to super depressed and realized, oh my shit, I quit my job. And that made it so much worse. So, impulsive behavior can definitely be part of bipolar, which is a huge thing in borderline as well. So there's a lot of similarities between the two. But bipolar is usually in cycles. So I can get full-blown depressed, which is, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, depressive episodes. So I can get super, super depressed. And then have periods where I feel good, like, not the level of confidence or on top of the world as people with bipolar 1 might feel, but like it's a new day, I'm good, like, yes, like, I wake up refreshed and I feel good and I'm like, I can conquer the fucking world. And then I get depressed and boom, all comes crashing down. And that can happen with borderline as well, but usually it's so much faster. It's not in like a cycle. It's just chaos. Chaos is the perfect word to describe the emotions of someone with borderline. At least mine and my experience with other people who have borderline. It's chaos. Absolute chaos in your head. Like, I can go, and like I said, I do have bipolar 2, so I have my cycles where, and I was angry when I was told I might have bipolar 2. I was kind of pissed off. I was like, no. I would know if I had that. No. I looked into it. It took me like a month to accept that maybe my psychiatrist is right. Because I looked back and I was like, you know what? I do have periods where I'm a lot more depressed than normal. And I have periods where I feel pretty confident and have energy. So now I accept that I do have bipolar 2. But borderline emotions are so extreme. They are so chaotic. I can go from, irritated, just absolutely pissed off, irritable, like I want to squeeze something because I'm so annoyed, for no reason most of the time, to super happy, excited, jumping up and down, like, ee! To crying because I'm so sad, literally in like 2 minutes. It's awful. So when people are like, God, they're so bipolar, or, oh my God, the weather here is so bipolar. No, the weather here is very borderline. That's something that I just like, that's a stereotype for bipolar, but it's not true. When people say that, that's more indicative of borderline. And I know it's just a saying, but those are the kinds of things, those are the kinds of stigmas that go around with mental disorders. So, I just, now anyone types it, I can't even English. Ugh. Now, anytime someone says, the weather's so bipolar, or Katy Perry's song Hot and Cold, or it's like, got a case of an odd bipolar, I'm like, no, maybe not, maybe borderline. And it's crazy. But yeah. But yeah, there's a statistic here that says as many as 20% of people who have borderline also have bipolar. And I didn't know that they could coexist. I had no idea you could have both until I got told I have both. So yeah, it's possible to have both, and that just makes it so much more confusing to get a diagnosis, because it's like, a combination of all these symptoms that are similar but kind of but different at the same time. Like, it's really confusing, and borderline has a lot of symptoms that go along with other illnesses that, you know, like, you can be extremely depressed all of a sudden with borderline. You can be impulsive with borderline. Some people with borderline see things and hear things. I do. Not often, but I do. Especially when I'm really stressed out. Like, I hear crying sometimes, which is so scary. And it's not real. Like, when I hear it, I walk around my house and I go outside to hear if it's real. But it's not. It's just crying and I hear it. So that's a hallucination. And that's like a symptom that's not as well known for borderline. Like, that borderline people can experience that. So if someone says, yeah, I hear things sometimes, or I see things sometimes, they may get diagnosed with something completely different, like schizophrenia, when they have borderline. And so that's common to get misdiagnosed, and it's also common to be comorbid and have more than one disorder, which just makes diagnosis and treatment so much more complicated. Now, big warning here. I'm going to be talking about suicide. I hate talking about suicide, but it's such a big deal, and it has to be talked about. And people have to be open to talking about it. Otherwise, people are gonna think they can't go to anyone, and then they're probably gonna kill themselves. So if you are really sensitive to, like, suicide or anything like that, you don't have to listen to this. I hope you do, but if it's gonna trigger you, don't listen. But some of the more disturbing things about borderline are the statistics about suicide. Borderline is such a painful disease. It really is. there's no way to accurately describe to someone who's not borderline what being borderline feels like. There's no way. There's no way to describe it to have other people understand. All I can do is say the symptoms and my experiences and how it feels to me, but I never feel like my words adequately describe how painful borderline is. Because no one's in my mind, just me. Like, I don't have the ability to have other people understand unless they have it. And it's not something I would ever wish on anyone. Sometimes I wish just for like a day that someone who is treating me like shit, or who doesn't understand, or says it's an excuse, or who says I'd like to slap them in the face. Sometimes I wish just for one day they could be in my head and feel what I feel and think what I think. But I would never wish it on anyone long term, merely as a way for others to understand. Borderline is so painful that usually, well, no, not usually, this is a statistic, about 70% of people who have borderline will attempt suicide at least once. I have never attempted. I've come very close a lot of times, but I've never attempted to. My sister is borderline and she has. Yeah. Yeah, it's 70%. So that's 7 out of 10 people who have borderline. And like, my heart sinks when I think about that, because that could be me one day. I could join that 70% one day. And those aren't great odds. You know, and every day I do more to get better, and I do better. And I work fucking hard. I do. I work hard to get better. But I won't lie, that number freaks me out. I hate that number. That's such a scary number. And eight to 10% of people with borderline will actually kill themselves. Like, will attempt and succeed. Suicide. I don't know, that I don't ever want to become a statistic. That's one of my biggest worries about having borderline, is that these statistics are facts. Like, 70% of people with borderline will attempt suicide at least once. 8 to 10% will succeed in killing themselves. And that's so scary to me, because I don't want to be a statistic. I don't want to do that. But I've said before in other videos, it's possible to relapse. It's possible to go back to the way you were. I have had many relapses where I've been doing really, really good and I feel good. And then all of a sudden, bam, back down to where I was. Just complete chaos, no control. I used to say, I don't control my emotions, they control me. And I still feel that way sometimes. Sometimes more than others. And I get scared because I don't want to kill myself. I don't want to attempt suicide. But then I get to that point where I do. And then if the pain is bad enough, it could happen. And I hate that. I hate that so much. Like, I never know what I'm gonna get every day. And everyone, life is unexpected. Like, no one knows what tomorrow's gonna bring. And that scares me. And I'm sure it scares everyone, but I react to things so differently and so intensely that one little thing could set me off and I could spiral down to the point where I want to kill myself again. And I don't want that. I'm so scared that that'll happen one day. And like, this video is really all over the place and I'm having a hard time grasping what I want to say and putting it in a good order, like organization. And I have dissociated a few times. But I'm still going to post this video because it's so important that people hear these things. Those are all the statistics that I had for borderline. But borderline is such a stigmatized disorder that people don't know about or have a negative view of, when it's so common, and it's more common than schizophrenia and other illnesses like that that are more well known. So it needs to be known about, you know. It needs to be out there. It needs to be out there. People need to know about it. Because when you get a diagnosis, the sooner you get it, the faster you can get into treatment and prevent further issues from developing. Whereas if you go 20, 30 years having borderline and you don't get diagnosed until your later life, you have so much work to do to get better. And I work hard every day to be healthy. And the therapy program I was in was so painful. I left the second day sobbing my eyes out saying I'd rather kill myself than be in that group because it was so painful. And I couldn't accept the things I was being taught. And I'm glad it's not that way now. But I'm 26 years old. I can't imagine what it's like for people who are 40, 50, or older, who are just getting diagnosed and having to do all this work to get better when they're in their later, you know, they're middle-aged or older. And some people don't ever get diagnosed. They just live that way for the rest of their lives. And because borderline causes so much stress, it is very common to develop physical issues and problems with your body that could kill you. And it's like I said in my video on mental health awareness, mental health plays a humongous role in your body and how your body reacts to things. And if you're stressed, that puts so much stress on your body, and you could develop such serious issues. And that's scary. That's so scary to me. But that's why this needs to be talked about. Is because there is so much stigma. There is so much misunderstanding about borderline and so much judgment from people who are supposed to train other people, the future generations, to help people like me. So I had to make this video, even though it's really all over the place and I'm not quite all here right now. I am gonna post this because there's serious statistics here and my experiences that hopefully will help people understand that borderline is a big deal and that it needs to be talked about and there needs to be awareness surrounding it. But not just in May. You know, it's nice to have a month dedicated to it, but it needs to be, people need to be aware of it all the time. Because there's so much work that needs to be done in regards to mental health and borderline and personality disorders, because personality disorders are so stigmatized, so frowned upon. And it's awful. But to be honest, I don't know what else to say. I feel bad because I'm kind of all over the place in this video, and this is my life, but today it's a little bit worse than normal. But I wanted to get this out in May. So I will post this, and it's got important information in it. And if you need help or you need resources, please look in the description, because there are resources and you can find help. Alright, so I'm gonna go. I'm not all here right now, so please take care of yourselves, guys, because it's so important, and I love you. Thank you for listening to me blab on and on, even when I'm not all here. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys later. Bye.